Hello, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine, Content Specialist for the Florida Joint Center for Citizenship, which is part of the School of Politics, Security, and International Affairs at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Welcome to our Middle School Civics Highlight Series. We'll be focusing our attention on Benchmark 2.9, in which we will analyze media and political communications and identify examples of bias, symbolism, and propaganda. In Part 1, we will be using scenarios to identify bias, symbolism, and propaganda. Our benchmark clarifications approach this issue in the same way, as does our highlights summary. Let's look at some scenarios. First, we're going to focus on identifying bias. So here's a political cartoon that's focusing on bias. We need to look for what are the elements of the cartoon that focus on bias, what is the message of the cartoon, and what does that mean in terms of the role of biased communications in the political process. So here we have 5 different windows. The idea being that a person is going to be registering themselves in a particular way. For example, to be registered as a member of a group or something like that. And the idea here is that the government, look at the hat in the lower left corner, not quite in the corner, but next to the basket with the nails, I suppose, that the House of Representatives is trying to identify individuals and their affiliations. So the first window on the left, register here if you are a lobbyist, meaning if you are someone who intends to try to persuade the government, specifically the House of Representatives, to take a particular action. Register here if you are a foreign agent, if you are representing a non-United States country, and we want to make sure that you represent who you say you're going to represent, because we don't know that you're going to be trying to persuade us or somehow encourage us to use our power in a particular way that helps your country versus our country. Register here if you are draft age, so that's the third window from the left. Meaning that, is this person of an age where they could be called up to serve in the military to defend the country. Register here if you want to vote. So notice what's going on here, that if a person goes up to one window, in essence, they're not going to be eligible to register in another way. So if they're a lobbyist, then perhaps the House doesn't want them voting. If they're a foreign agent, definitely are not allowed to vote. If they're not a U.S. citizen, if they're of draft age, then particularly when this cartoon was drawn, it was going to be that young people couldn't quite yet vote. They weren't old enough at the time. Register here if you want to vote, and then register here, the window on the right, if you are a communist. So of those 5 groups, there appears to be a bias against communists, people who are foreign agents, and lobbyists, as well as perhaps a bias in favor of those who are of draft age to be registering themselves but not to register to vote. So it's kind of interesting, because certainly political cartoons can't tell a complete story, but the idea that these 5 groups are supposed to be separating or segregating themselves tells an interesting story about what were the goals of the House of Representatives at the time that this political cartoon was drawn. Next, we look at a political poster that many of us might have seen before, and we're going to focus attention on using scenarios to identify symbolism. So we'll be looking for symbols in this poster. So let's focus on the colors that this person is wearing. the colors that this person is wearing are red, white, and blue, and red, white, and blue are the colors of the American flag. The American flag also includes stars on it. There is one star representing each state, and each white star is on a background of blue. So if we look at the person's hat suggests that they are also representing the United States, not just with the colors that they're wearing, but also the fact that they appear to be wearing something that looks like a part of an American flag. Notice that this person is pointing a finger, and that finger is being pointed toward the person who is viewing the poster. I want you. I want you. So that means that the person reading the poster is, in essence, being persuaded to join the U.S. Army, to enlist in the U.S. Army. Now, combined, what do these symbols represent? This idea of personal responsibility to one's country, representations of the country by the colors of the suit, as well as the band around the hat, representing the flag. And this image that we see is often referred to as Uncle Sam. Well, Sam doesn't refer to anybody's Uncle Sam. Rather, U.S. Uncle Sam refers to United States. So the United States wants you to enlist in the United States Army. Enlist now. And this is our last poster that we're going to be looking at, focusing on identifying propaganda. Propaganda is used to persuade people to take a particular action using images. And so here we have someone who's standing up in a room of people who are seated. The person has something in their pocket. The person in the lower right corner, he's also holding something in his hand. And what is the connection that's being made here? Save freedom of speech, which is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, buy war bonds. Save freedom of speech, buy war bonds. So what we see in this particular image is that somebody is saying that you and I, as individuals, should use our financial resources to support the war effort. Otherwise, we will no longer be governed by the United States, because the United States does have protection of freedom of speech. We will be taken over by another country that does not guarantee freedom of speech. So the only way to recognize the freedom that's being exercised in the poster is for us to buy war bonds. Thank you for joining me for Middle School Civics Highlights. Do you still have questions? Please contact us using the information that appears on the screen. Till next time, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine. Thank you for joining me.